Hi, my name is Jeremy. I'm here in the Guildhall Museum, which is very, very quiet at the moment because we have no visitors. So we're making some videos to reach out to you out there until the time you can come and see us again. Now this particular video is Anglo Saxons Part 2, and you'll only understand it if you've seen Part 1. So if you haven't seen Part 1 yet, go and do that and come back. Right. So if you've seen Part 1, you'll know that the reason I'm making Part 2 is because of something so wonderful, it's made me break all my rules. Well, one rule at least I've told you about, because instead of keeping within 10 minutes, I've made another video. But there's a bigger rule, the biggest rule. Because you see, my bonus object, my extra thing I want to tell you about, it's not actually at the Guildhall Museum. But as I'm here on my own, and nobody can hear me, as long as you don't tell anyone, I think we'll be all right. So what is it that's so amazing? I want to tell you about it, even though it's not my job. Well, if you live like me in this part of the world, then you'll have to make a bit of a journey to see it. Now, I know you can't do that at the moment. You're not going to be able to do it next week. You might not be able to do it next month. But maybe one day. Go to Oxford, to the Ashmolean Museum, and have a look at this. This is called the Alfred Jule. The only problem talking about the Alfred Jule is it's so wonderful in so many different ways that we have to start off with just ordinary wonderful before we get to awesomely, crushingly wonderful. So we'll do that. First thing, ordinary wonderful thing. It's actually really, really interesting to look at. That bit there, there's a see-through bit which is made of rock crystal. And it covers a very interesting picture of a rather strange-looking person with really big eyes. And they're made of beautiful blue enamel. Holding it together is gold. And at the front down here, there is a beautifully carved animal's head. And the animal's head has got a kind of mouth open. But there's a hole, because something is missing. You see, this is not really a jewel at all. What went in here was a kind of a stick. I mean, it might have been a fancy stick, but it was a stick. The point of the stick was a straight line, because this thing is a kind of a bookmark. At least it's a bookmark if, like me, when you read your book, you might use the bookmark to keep the place, but then when you're reading, you move the bookmark down the page line by line, which is probably what people did with this thing and its stick. So first wonderful thing, I think it's really lovely to look at. Second ordinary wonderful thing, this object actually talks to us because it's got words around it. Words that were put there 1,200 years ago. It says, Alfred Mech Hecht Ywircan. Now I know that sounds a bit strange, but that's actually English, coming out of the past 1,200 years ago to speak to us. It sounds different because English was different a very, very long time ago. What it means in our English is Alfred ordered me to be made. So the object speaks to us tells us about Alfred. And this is not just any Alfred. This is King Alfred. So here we've got an object that was arranged to be made by a king. And he gave it as a present. So next wonderful thing, we know he gave it as a present because the letter that he wrote to go with it still exists. Now, it was made as part of a book. Because you see, the idea was that King Alfred made lots of beautiful books, or got people to make them, and sent them out all around the country to places of learning. And with each book, he gave them a bookmark or pointer. And we know he did that because at the front of the book, he wrote a little chapter, a beginning himself, that talked about this present, which in Old English was called an astel, the bookmark or pointer. Now that's pretty cool. We've got a king, the king's present, and the letter that the king wrote when he gave this to people. Now, we're getting on to the levels of pretty awesomely wonderful. Because this Alfred, he's not just a king. He's a king who is known to his friends as the Great. Now, Alfred's not great because he was an important military leader and a brave soldier. But he was those things. I mean, this is the man who beat the Vikings. You don't do that unless you're pretty hard. He's not the great because he was a genius at planning. But he was, because he realised that beating the Vikings wasn't just about fighting, it was about teaching his people how to protect themselves, which he did. And he even worked out a way to pay for it. But he's not the great because he was a peacemaker either. But he was a peacemaker. He met his enemies. He made an agreement with them, and he even gave them somewhere to live to make sure the peace lasted. Now you see, the reason why Alfred was truly the great is actually because of this thing. Because this was made after Alfred and the English had almost disappeared, had almost gone under because of the wars and attacks of the Vikings. It was nearly the end. This, the king's present, is showing everyone Alfred looking towards the future. This is him climbing out of the darkness of war and violence, looking forward. So sometimes when it's like this, things are a little bit rough or strange, and we're stuck in our homes, and sometimes it's a little bit scary. I think about Alfred and his Jule, because unlike so much of history, the Alfred Jule, it's not about war, because what the Alfred Jule is for can't happen if there is war. It needs peace. It's not about religion, because what that is for is something that happens in this world, our world. What this is about, it's about culture, it's about learning, and it's about books. That's why This is my favourite thing in all museums in the UK. And I'm really pleased to be able to share a bit of it with you. See you soon.